Welcome back, online community. This week's movement breakdown is going to be on the split jerk. Split jerk is a pretty common Olympic weightlifting movement. You'll see it come up in CrossFit classes from time to time. Typically, we're going to see it with a barbell, but it could also be done with a dumbbell or a kettlebell. The video for today is going to focus on some common faults and some fixes to hopefully improve your split jerk for the long term. So follow along, take some notes, and be sure to comment if you have any questions. When we're dealing with our shoulder to overhead movements, you're going to typically find the press, the push press, and the jerk. These are going to increase in difficulty and the amount of weight that you can lift with them. The split jerk is going to follow off of that push jerk movement. So instead of keeping the feet underneath us in the frontal plane, the split jerk is going to have the feet travel forward and back to establish depth and stability underneath the bar. We're using the idea that our arms are strong when they are locked out to establish position under the bar. So we can basically get past that sticking point above the eye level by dropping under the bar and locking out. So we jump the bar up as high as we can, we drop, we punch, we lock the arms out, and once we have the arms locked out, we can use our legs to recover out of the movement. Let's take a look at our positions. Our starting position was going to be with the bar in the front rack position. We want a decent amount of contact between the bar and the shoulder. If you're resting with the bar out in front on your collarbone, we need to try and get those elbows up a little bit so there's a little bit more contact.
Let's take a look at a split jerk. At speed, it's going to look like this. We're going to back it up, we're going to slow it down a little bit and show you some of these positions. We're going to start with our line of action. So we want to start with a vertical dip drive. What that looks like, as the knees bend, the back is going to slide straight down and it's going to stay in line with the hips. We're going to drive through the heel, hit full extension at the top. At that moment, you will push yourself under the bar and establish your footwork position. At the bottom, the bar should remain locked out over the shoulder and the hip. I'm looking for a somewhat vertical front shin, and I want to plant the back toe. In this landing position, we should have a decent amount of stability in the frontal plane, so it's not going to go forward or backwards. If we can recover properly, we're going to recover the front foot first, followed by the back foot. The lift is complete when the feet are together and the bar is locked out overhead.
Let's talk about some faults and some fixes. The split jerk is a pretty complicated movement, so there's going to be a huge number of things that can go wrong with this. We'll talk about some really common basic ones that we see a lot in the gym. Number one is going to be the bar path. We see when you are dip driving during that initial phase of the jerk, you're going to slide onto your toes and you're going to jump off your toes. That incorrect bar path or improper bar path is usually going to lead to bad footwork. So you'll be landing with too much weight on the front leg or occasionally too much weight on the back leg, but it will not be equally distributed. A number of problems can come up from the footwork. We would like the feet about equal distance from the midline or the starting position of the jerk so that we have weight equally distributed when we land. If you're not consistent with your footwork, if your feet are landing too far away or too close together, you're either not going to be getting enough depth under the barbell, or you're going to be getting too much depth and it's going to be hard to recover out of the lift. We also need some bend in the back knee. If you don't have any back knee bend, it's going to put a lot more pressure on your lower to mid back. So using that back knee bend will give you depth and it's going to allow you to stay in a little bit more neutral position with the upper body. Once we're able to land the split jerk, we can have a fault come out of the recovery. A typical bad recovery involves recovering the back foot first. So we recover that front foot first to establish good habits. Every once in a while we need to recover the back foot to save a lift, but in general that front foot first is going to be the best way to save the lift or make the lift every single time. So how are we going to fix the jerk? Well, because there's so many problems that come up, there are a lot of drills to help address those problems. We'll go through some of the fixes for some of the problems we talked about tonight, and keep in mind these are not the end-all fixes to these problems. There are lots of different ways to approach this. Number one is going to be addressing that starting position. If you are not able to get the bar in a good front rack position or not able to establish some contact with the shoulder, we're going to need to try and fix that first. So working on the mobility for the wrists or maybe the shoulders, maybe the external rotation would be a good start. We want the bar to be able to stay on top of the shoulders, so when we do our dip drive, we get a lot of power from our hips and our legs. If it's not up on the shoulder properly, when we dip drive, the arms absorb some of that weight as we dip drive and you don't get as much transfer from the hip. Number 2 is going to be the bar path. As I mentioned, we like heavy things to go up and down. So if your bar is traveling forward during the dip and also during the drive, we need to try and fix our dip first. A typical drill we like to do is one where we pull the toes off the ground. So sit back on your heels, pull your toes off the ground, and feel what that dip feels like. Try to imagine you're scratching your back on a tree. So your shoulders and hips should stay in one line as you descend into that dip. Another way we might try to approach this is go for 2 dips followed by 1 jerk. So practice the dip twice, hopefully with perfect form, before you attempt your jerk. That gives you time to just focus on the dip drive as opposed to worry about getting the bar overhead. Last thing we want to deal with is going to be the footwork. If your footwork is not consistent, we want to establish some tactile cues to help you get the feet in the right place. We can do this by blocking with plates, blocking with a wall, or drawing some targets. If you know where your feet should land, you can draw a box over where those feet should go, and you can try and hit that box. Typically, if you're going to block with some sort of plate, we want to try and make sure we're not using a lot of weight so we're safe during the movement. As far as the recovery goes, practice the recovery. Usually what I tell people to do is to pause between the catch or the landing and the recovery. So try and hold that recovery or that split jerk landing position for 2 seconds. After you hold for 2 seconds, recover normally. That'll give you a little bit of time separating the movement of the landing and the recovery. When we're dealing with light weights and we're trying to recover as we're locking out the movement, it can lead to a bad habit of not having the bar locked out. Another movement we could work on, or another drill we could work on, is a jerk recovery. So we can load up the bar, we can mount it in a high spot, get into a split jerk landing position, and then try and recover out of this movement. This is going to allow you to be comfortable under a heavier load and then allow you to try and recover. If you're doing this, make sure that we're setting the bar back down safely. We don't want to drop it back onto pegs because that can damage the bar or the rack. So how do we implement these fixes? You can typically practice the jerk 3 to 4 times a week. It does not always need to be practiced with a clean. Sometimes it helps to just work on the jerk so you don't have that initial fatigue coming out of the clean. But doing some of these drills before you work into your jerk itself will help establish some consistency. There's an old saying that practice makes perfect, which is somewhat true. Practice will actually make permanent. Perfect practice makes perfect. So you need to practice these drills with intention so that you are doing every movement correctly. If we can be consistent with our warm-up for the jerk, a lot of that stuff will transfer. We can't actually try and be fast under a heavy load. You have to learn to be fast under a light load. So doing that empty barbell warm-up and trying to be fast on the jerk will pay dividends down the road when you are trying to be fast with a heavy weight. Hey guys, thanks for tuning in for our movement breakdown on the split jerk. Leave a like or a comment below and let us know what your split jerk experience has been like. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel for weekly movement breakdowns and daily workout briefings. Hopefully you stay safe during the quarantine. We'll see you next time.